A ship sailing itself, no one on board. In 1872, the Mary Celeste was found drifting in the Atlantic, sails up, cargo untouched, food still on the table. 10 people had been aboard: the captain, his wife, their infant daughter, 7 crew members, all gone. The lifeboat was missing, but the ship was perfectly seaworthy. Months of food, no storm damage, no signs of struggle, no bodies. They clearly left in a hurry. But why? The ship wasn't sinking. It wasn't on fire. Every theory has been debunked. So what made 10 people abandon a perfectly good ship? And where did they go? To understand why this disappearance shook the entire world, you have to understand who Amelia Earhart was in 1937. She wasn't just a pilot. She was an icon. In 1928, she became the first woman to cross the Atlantic Ocean by air, as a passenger. That wasn't enough for her. In 1932, she did it again, this time alone, at the controls, flying solo from Newfoundland to Northern Ireland. The first woman ever to do it. World went insane. Ticker tape parades, a meeting with President Hoover, Medal of Honor. She was everywhere. But Earhart wasn't done. By 1937, she had set her sights on the biggest prize in aviation. A round-the-world flight along the equatorial route, the longest possible path around the globe, roughly 29,000 miles. No one had done it that way. She wanted to be first. Her navigator for the journey was Fred Noonan, an experienced, highly respected aviator who had helped chart Pan American's Pacific routes. Together, they had everything they needed, or so it seemed. By June of 1937, they were more than halfway around the world, but the hardest leg was still ahead. On July 1st, 1937, Earhart and Noonan took off from Lae, New Guinea, in their Lockheed Electra 10E, a twin-engine aircraft specially modified for long-range flight. Their destination, Howland Island, a tiny sliver of land in the central Pacific Ocean. Tiny doesn't begin to cover it. Howland Island is less than 2 miles long, barely above sea level, and surrounded by nothing but open water in every direction. Finding it from the air required precise navigation. This is where things started to go wrong. The flight from Lae to Howland Island was approximately 2,456 miles, the longest, most dangerous leg of the entire trip. It would take roughly 18 hours over open ocean with no landmarks, no GPS, nothing but stars and radio signals to guide them. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca was stationed near Howland Island, specifically to communicate with Earhart and help guide her in. What followed was one of the most frustrating exchanges in aviation history. Earhart's transmissions reached the Itasca, but there was a problem. A serious one. The Itasca could hear Earhart's voice clearly. Earhart could not clearly hear the Itasca. The crew sent transmissions, sent navigation signals, sent homing pulses. But Earhart's responses made it clear she wasn't receiving most of them. She reported cloudy weather. She reported fuel concerns. She gave position estimates that the crew couldn't quite make sense of. "We must be on you, but cannot see you," she transmitted. "Gas is running low." At one point, her voice was described by the Itasca crew as sounding urgent, almost frantic. Then came that final message at 8:43 a.m. local time, the line of position 157-337, and then silence. Itasca waited. No further contact ever came. By the time a search was formally launched, hours had already passed. The U.S. Navy deployed battleships, aircraft carriers, and dozens of planes across 250,000 square miles of ocean. They found nothing. Not a single piece of the Electra. Not a life raft. Not a signal. The search was called off after 16 days. And this is where the story stops making sense, because what happened next is where the mystery truly begins. Here are the facts that investigators cannot explain away even now. Earhart's final position report was vague. She said she was flying on a line of position running 157 to 337 degrees, likely near Howland, but no one could pin down exactly where. The Electra carried enough fuel for roughly 23 hours of flight. She had been airborne for approximately 20 hours when contact was lost, meaning she may have had fuel left. Some researchers have noted that Noonan, though experienced, may have been working with navigational challenges, including a possible celestial navigation error due to the time of day and cloud cover. And then there are the radio signals. In the days after Earhart vanished, multiple people, including a teenage girl in Florida, a radio operator in Wyoming, and a ham radio operator in Texas, reported hearing distress signals they believed were coming from Earhart's plane. The U.S. Navy took some of these seriously enough to investigate. None were conclusively confirmed. None were explained away either. But where did she go? Investigators, historians, and search teams have argued about this for nearly 9 decades. And right now, there are 3 major possibilities still in play. Here's where verified fact ends and honest speculation begins. These are the 3 theories that serious researchers still argue over today. And we're not picking a winner, because the evidence doesn't allow it. Theory 1. She crashed into the ocean near Howland Island. This is the official position of most aviation historians and the U.S. government. According to this theory, Earhart and Noonan simply ran out of fuel while searching for Howland Island, ditched in the ocean, and the plane sank in deep water. Water deep enough that the wreckage has never been found. This is consistent with the radio transmissions, the fuel calculations, and the absence of any confirmed land-based evidence. The Pacific is vast and its depths are extreme. Some investigators believe this is the simplest explanation, and in cases like this, the simplest explanation is often the right one. But here's the problem. No debris, no oil slick. Planes that ditch in the ocean usually leave something. This one left nothing at all. Theory 2. She survived, at least for a while, as a castaway on Nikumaroro Island. Nikumaroro, then called Gardner Island, is an uninhabited atoll about 350 miles southeast of Howland Island, which sits squarely along that 157-337 line of position Earhart mentioned in her final transmission. One theory suggests she may have landed the Electra on a flat reef at low tide and survived on the island for days or possibly weeks, sending radio distress calls before the plane was swept off the reef. According to investigators at TIGER, the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, bones were found on Nikumaroro in 1940 by a British colonial officer. Those bones were measured and described at the time as likely belonging to a woman of Northern European descent, approximately Earhart's height. The bones were later lost. 2018 forensic reanalysis of the original measurements, according to researchers, suggested they were consistent with Earhart's body. Artifacts found on Nikumaroro over decades, including fragments of what may be American aircraft aluminum, a piece of a zipper consistent with 1930s women's clothing, and remnants of improvised tools, have been cited by TIGAR as possible evidence of a castaway's camp. None of it has been definitively confirmed as Earhart's, but none of it has been definitively ruled out. Theory 3, and this one has far less verified support, so hear it as the long shot it is. Some researchers over the years have speculated that Earhart was on a secret intelligence mission for the U.S. government, observing Japanese military installations in the Pacific, and that her disappearance was connected to that activity. This theory has circulated for decades, but has never been supported by declassified documents or credible primary sources. Most serious historians treat it with significant skepticism. We mention it because it exists and because viewers always ask, but the evidentiary bar here is very low. So you've got 3 very different endings to the same story, an ocean grave near Howland, a slow survival and death on a remote atoll, or something murkier we may never untangle. The truth is, every theory has a gap. Every theory has a piece of evidence it can't fully explain. That's what makes this case one of the most enduring mysteries in American history. Amelia Earhart set out to prove that the world could be circled, that limits were made to be broken. She broke so many of them in her lifetime, but this one, the last one, broke her instead, or so we assume. Because the honest answer, 8 decades later, is this: we don't know. We genuinely, verifiably do not know what happened to Amelia Earhart, and that silence, the same silence that followed that last transmission over the Pacific on July 2nd, 1937, is still there, still open, still waiting. The cold archive never closes a file. What do you think happened? Tell us in the comments, and subscribe because the next file is already open.